leave no tossed dwarf behind.
This is the person who makes playoffs every year.
It's over there with McFadden's hands on Hillers.
Are you making fun of me?
I think it was one of those things where, hey, let me ride this while it's going here. That's what she said.
You're the only one I know that does that to themselves, Mer.
That's what she said?
Oh, see, now that was appropriate. Somebody else says something and you can do it.
Here we go.
Happy Deviled Egg Day, and welcome back to the Sandlot Cast, the podcast about our uber competitive fantasy football league where you can't be a geek off the street, you know what I mean? Welcome to week 9 of the fantasy season.
Half our owners are geeks off the street.
That's right. And here to welcome you, as always, I've got Anthony and Hillers. What's going on, gentlemen?
Hey, man, that is the worst holiday I've ever heard. Who was the genius, and I'm saying that sarcastically, that said, I'm going to take hard-boiled eggs, take out the most disgusting part of the hard-boiled, which is the yolk, mix it with mustard, and then put it back in there. It's disgusting.
There's nothing good about deviled eggs. I hate every single part of them.
Yeah, you mispronounced delicious, actually, because they're a fantastic snack that should be in more places.
Ugh.
They're fantastic. And there's so much you can do with them. Now, do they need their own pay?
Throw them in the trash.
I don't know, but, there's nothing wrong with a perfectly good deviled egg. They used to serve them at movie theaters before popcorn was a thing.
Well,
then, deviled eggs,
God,
but then, the Depression hit and the war and whatnot, and they needed that stuff.
Oh, fumble!
Could you imagine, the deviled egg toots during the movie theater? How horrible the movie theater would smell at the end of it?
Well, I think movies were 15 minutes back then, so,
That's the thing. You put them in your fridge, and then everything in your friggin' fridge smells like deviled eggs by the end of the day. It's so disgusting. Ugh.
I don't have the time or the inclination to make such a delicious snack. But
speaking of eggs, what's our stance on McDonald's serving breakfast all day?
Well, not the whole breakfast. It's 8 items.
Oh, really? I don't know the details of it.
And yet you want us to weigh in? Come on. Study up on the issues.
This is America, man. Haven't you watched these debates?
Yeah, well, you've been watching the Republican ones, obviously.
I think the real benefit.
You don't need facts to contribute.
The real benefit of that comes out when you can start mixing the lunch and the breakfast items together. You can get an egg McMuffin hamburger kind of unholy alliance thing going on.
Maybe an egg McMuffin with French fries, something like that. Could be good.
Whatever.
All right.
Think they'd make you a burger with a McGriddle bun?
Hell yeah.
Like a chicken
that's pretty
sandwich?
crazy. That's a bold request there, Hillers.
I don't know if boldness is what drove that request.
You are Mr. Bold. All right, gentlemen. Well, let's get into it here. How do we think? What do we think of the fantasy season so far? We made it through Bloody Sunday yesterday, I guess. Some of us did.
Not all of us.
But how are things going for you there, Ant?
It's been a crazy fantasy season all around because our last podcast going through it. I mean, it was just before our Week 4 doubleheader. And we kind of thought we knew where the teams were at, and then that doubleheader occurred, and it introduced all sorts of parity into the league that wasn't there previously. And now it's all the teams. Well, there's a good set of teams that were in it and now sort of out of it, and some that we had written off and are now in first place in their divisions. But I guess we're going to get into that, right?
Right. Hillers, I know you had quite the swing last week in that you acquired. It was quite the coup. You get Forte in a trade. And also T.Y. Hilton, and then yesterday Forte goes down. So you want to take us through that roller coaster of emotions?
This game just plays with my emotions so much. I mean, on Week 7, I was like, everything's coming up, Hillers. It's going to be great. Prepare for the new era. And then Drew Brees dropped 6 touchdowns on me. Forte goes down.
7 touchdowns he had, actually.
So I'm like, oh wow, tied the record, huh?
Yeah.
I probably was throwing up after the 6th one, missed that 7th one, but it was hard, and not just for me, man. Fantasy players were going down left, right, and center last week. I think free agent money is more valuable than it ever was in the league right now. With a lot of people, a lot of injuries, and just not that much way to recuperate. If you've already spent a lot. So
I had a spirited email chain with our commissioners today, wondering whether or not I had $1 or $2 left in Fab.
Oh,
because it's ever so critical.
And to answer your question, it is 1.
Okay, that's fine. Oh God.
Yeah, sorry. It's the accounting is wrong. The free agent budget is correct.
Well,
We've had a lot of
this site.
big spending this year, more than I think in previous years. I don't remember so many people being down in single-digit bad money left before week 8 or before week 8 is over. So I mean, I guess that's kind of fun. But guys like Assassins, where are you at, man? I saw you put a chat to the league that said, "Is there a way to see your failed waiver bids?" I mean, you're sitting on $70, man. Put a couple extra bucks out there, dude.
Yeah.
This is the week to not be a cheap ass. If you're gonna go, pick up some people, give it a shot.
All right, well, let's get into it, guys. This week we're going to do our standard team overviews. We're going to do power rankings, and then we're going to go over. We're going to mix in some of our predictions we've made up until now, just to see how they're jiving with the current setup of the league and how things are going. Some good, some not so good. So let's start off in the return of the Jedi division here, and we will start with the team we normally end with, and that is PBJ time, because we're going to give Brett some airtime here.
A little bit of love for the first week ever.
Yeah, instead of the we got to hurry up, we got to get this done kind of time that we normally do by the end of this.
Still sucks? Yep. Okay. Good show.
Yeah. So PBJ time will be at 3-8 after tonight's game. Their average points for this year is 83.7, which is the lowest in the league. Coming out of the draft, we weren't too high on this team, and they honestly haven't. The things that needed to break their way haven't really broken their way. Things like Alshon Jeffrey being hurt for a lot of the beginning of the year. Melvin Gordon stinks. Sammy Watkins is someone you never have to want to rely on. But overall here, Anthony, we'll start with you. On Brett's team, I mean, are there any signs of encouragement or things he can do or should be doing at this point in the season?
Well, at 3-8, you're a wild card team at best, and that's if you win out from here. So I think he's out, and I think he's got to start looking at what he can do to help his team next year. That said, I think he's got some good building blocks. I think you hang on to Alshon Jeffrey because he's going to be a free agent next year. He's going to go somewhere else, and probably be more productive there without Jay Cutler at the helm. And I like Andy Dalton. He might be a good keeper. You know, he could be a keeper. I don't know. Maybe he's a little expensive.
Right.
But Melvin Gordon, that's really a strange thing to me because back in week 1 or the week 4 podcast, I forget, I know I was commenting about that front flip he did, lands on his wrist, and then runs another 30 yards for a touchdown. I mean, this guy's an athlete, and I know he had a couple of fumbles in one game, but why are they not playing this guy more? I mean, is Brandon Oliver the guy that you want to run in San Diego?
Or Danny Woodhead? I don't know.
And Woodhead's good, but where's your workhorse running back? Melvin is it, and why aren't they playing him more? I really don't understand.
Hillers, is there anything he could have done differently this season, or any moves you think he could have made that would have helped him?
Well, just some moves. I mean, I understand you wanting to hold on to some guys here, but I think rather than just being responsive to trades, if you're losing, something's got to change, and there are guys that early on in the season I think he could have traded on their name and gotten more than he can for them now that after several weeks it's looking like they're not going to pan out. He definitely has fire sale potential going forward. I mean, there are teams that would want a Forsett. There are teams that would want a Frank Gore and would be willing to give up a little something. So he's still in a good place to position himself well for next season. But, I mean, you got to look down your roster and say, my highest scoring non-quarterback is Brandon McManus. And that's not good. That's not a tenable position. It's like just because you would think that a guy like Andre Johnson or Sammy Watkins would have points, or that Melvin Gordon would have, the coaching strategy would turn around there. If it doesn't, you got to make a move. I mean, if you wait so long, I mean, you say 3-8 is wild card at best, but an 8-loss team hasn't made it into the wild card in the last many years.
It's been a while, yeah.
It's been a long time. So I mean, and especially this year with it, everybody last week at 6-4, there's just no way. So at this point, I got to think, make what trades you can, leverage any running backs you don't plan on keeping to the best extent you can. With as many people that are hurt, you might even be able to trade Melvin Gordon just because somebody's playing. You know what I mean? For something,
right?
Package him up.
Yeah. I mean,
figure out. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
He's definitely sitting on. He's got Justin Forsett and Frank Gore, who are high-priced 30-year-old running backs, right? I mean, these are guys that you would think he would have dealt to a contender for something for next year. And at this point, with all the injuries and things going on, maybe it's too late. Like, I don't know, because there's some trades that have already gone down, some guys that have been dealt that are more next year guys, and I don't know if those deals are out there for him anymore to be made. So I hope he didn't wait too long, but those are the guys that you've got to deal. I mean, at some point you've got to say, this year's done. I need to get whatever I can for these guys, because even if it's a little bit of value, it's more than I'll have for. It's more than Frank Gore is going to be worth to me next year, probably. You know.
Yeah, and I'll add to that and say it's even harder to trade some of those guys. He's got 1 week left to do it. Forset's on a bye next week. Frank Gore's on a bye the following week.
In week 10, doubleheader.
And even a guy like John Brown, who, you know, maybe he's a keeper at $13, but at this point you can't. It's really tough to trade John Brown because he was hurt this past week on a bye in week 9, and then the next 4 games, which will take you through the regular season, he's got Seahawks, Bengals, Niners, and Rams. So 3 really, really tough defenses against them. So
yeah, I mean, what's the plan for next year? You know, at some point you got to look at your team and say, what's my plan for next year? And looking at this team, I don't see it. So we'll see. All right, let's move on to the Dad Dicks here. Actually, we never did a real deal or no schkapeel podcast. So you want to do that this time?
Sure. No schkapeel. This is an easy one.
no schkapeel. Sorry, Brett.
Dad Dicks. Dad Dicks find themselves at 4-7. Probably safe to say they will not be repeating this year as champion. Their average points for is 88.1. Coming out of the
Maybe you
draft,
can play me every week.
we were not too thrilled with his team, but there were some. Definitely, he had a strong running back core. As we knew, his wide receivers would be hurting a little bit. But Hillers, when you look at Grimes' team, what do you see as far as how his season's gone and why it's gone that way?
Well, he was just relying on a suite of guys that were not the same guys they were last year, with the exception of this week. You know, Drew Brees was having some trouble. You know, I think he scored 150 some points on the season. 52 of them came yesterday. You know, so I mean, that's not a starting elite quarterback from week to week. You know, as much as he abused me. And while guys, you know, he does have a very deep running back core that I'm sure people have sent trade offers for some of these guys. There's not one of them that's like a Devonta Freeman where it's setting the league on fire, and his wide receiver core is typically abysmal. Yeah, they're just nothing doing there. There's not one star on this whole thing.
You talking about his running backs?
No, his wide receivers.
Oh.
His running back core, like I say, is very deep and strong, but it's not, you know, I'm not seeing.
He's got Le'Veon Bell.
Well,
he had Le'Veon Bell.
Does he? Not anymore.
But I mean, you say he doesn't have any good running backs. He had basically the consensus number 1 overall pick this year on this team.
No, he said he has strong running backs and weak wide receivers, is what he said.
That is the point. Strong
I don't
running
listen
backs,
to you,
deep core. Well, just wait to rebut it until you've heard the whole point. But yeah, the wide receivers is just not enough. You need to have a more complete team than this, even with a 91-point kicker. You know, I mean, there were wide receivers to be had on the waivers, and I think if he'd been a little bit more forward-looking or a little bit more willing to dump, you know, a Deshaun Jackson or a Vincent Jackson or something for one of those guys earlier on, he would have been more pleased with how his team looked.
Yeah, maybe. Anthony, what's gone wrong for Grimes here?
Well, so I'll agree on the wide receivers. He got a bunch of injuries and everything. But what's funny about his running backs, as deep and strong as they were kind of misfiring. You know, the weeks that Bell was out, you know, he couldn't put together a strong running back performance by both of them, kind of at the same time. You know, just bad timing for him all around. And Breeze, you know, I didn't really like Breeze this year. I'll stick to that story despite his 50-point game.
And Jimmy Graham obviously is not and won't be what he was in New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, Breeze he had a terrible start, really. He was injured for a game. He had that shoulder problem. He was out for like a game and a half, I think, with that. His wide receivers, he knew were bad from the start. I remember him talking about it at the draft. It really required Deshaun Jackson to be healthy and contribute, and he has done neither of those things. So basically, Vincent Jackson's been his number 1 wide receiver the whole year, and that's never a recipe for success. And then, like you said, Jimmy Graham, who has just turned into one of those other guy tight ends. Like, he's just kind of there, you know. He's good, but he's not anything better than any of the other top 10 or 12 guys, you know.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
I'd rather have either one of my tight ends than him right now.
Yeah, so let's go real deal. I mean, what, could he have done anything, or is there anything he can do now to help him for next year? I guess let's.
Oh yeah, with those 3 running backs, sure. Pick your keepers.
Yeah, but okay, so he's got his running backs, right? But he can only keep 2. So I mean, does he deal Woodhead? Does he deal Murray? Is there one of them he can deal,
He's
or does
not
he
going to
deal
deal Murray.
Breeze?
He loves Murray, but
Yeah.
and whether or not you deal Woodhead or who's this other guy? I already clicked
Bell?
off.
He's not dealing
Bell.
Bell.
No,
I think
he's
you
not
deal
dealing Bell.
Woodhead.
Yeah, you got to deal Woodhead. I mean, and it does depend on if you think the Chargers are going to have the similar running strategy next season as they do this season. But hell, I'd trade him for Danny Woodhead right now.
Yeah.
Woodhead
You're not
has
going to get a ton, but you get maybe something for him. Who knows?
it's funny 'cause
88 point
Woodhead
running back.
has good seasons every year, and no one ever keeps him.
Yeah.
And then he
He's
goes
solid. Plug him in at RB2 flex, and you feel pretty good about it. All right, so no schkapeel on this for everybody.
Yeah, he's already done.
All right. Next team, Black Widows, at either 6-5 or 7-4. It looks to be 7-4 the way the Panthers game's going tonight. Average points for is 91.9. Anthony, we will start with you here. What has gone wrong / right for the Black Widows? Mainly wrong. Well, there's not much that's gone right, so we'll go wrong, I guess.
It's almost like you're reading from the Hiller's book of how to play fantasy football, where you draft a team, and then Hiller's might do it through trades, and you seem to be doing it through free agency. By week 7, your team is like not even a shell of what it was before. It's pretty funny.
That's the way to go. We call it agility in the biz.
Yeah, it's quarterback, man. That was the problem. Peyton, he's a guy that I did not believe in this season.
Yeah, but you didn't think he'd be this bad, right?
I did not think he would be as bad as he is. I can't believe that he survived a full week of no bids on the waiver. A full week. You dropped him over a week ago. 2 waiver periods.
Yeah, he was on bye the week I dropped him, I think.
That is remarkable. In other seasons, that would have generated huge free agent bids immediately.
Yeah,
He
so
wouldn't
it's
have been out
pretty
there
interesting.
He wouldn't. Yeah, wouldn't even have been there.
And your running back situation, man, I think it's a little dry there with Dion Lewis, who's I guess kind of in a timeshare with Blunt, and Jonathan Stewart will be fine. In fact, he'll probably be good.
Dion Lewis has had 1 week where he's had under 12 points, by the way. So, just throwing that out there.
Okay, but his number of attempts has been over. I'll go down the list. 15, 7, 8, 6, 4, 5. Is that what you want in a running back?
Yeah, but look at his receptions and his targets. That's what he does. He's a receiver. He's more of a receiver than a running back. He just comes out of the backfield.
There's definitely potential there, but you can't deny that your squad is a bit busted from what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've already had to trade away the guy that you were really banking on, and the other one you were really banking on is on your IR. You know what I mean? So Dion Lewis is fine, but it's a far cry from what you were hoping for this team, and not the premier powerhouse that I think you were rightly anticipating when you started. As far as your receiving core goes, you kind of banking on a couple of guys there. So you're in a decent position starting lineup-wise, but fragile and maybe not strong enough to beat the elite teams right now, most weeks.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, running through it, I mean, lost Jordy preseason, who was going to be a keeper, lost Jamal Charles, lost Arian Foster, basically lost Peyton Manning. So definitely lost some studs there, but also I've had a lot of luck in points against. I think I may have the lowest points against in the league. So that has been, which has been a long time
title
coming.
to have.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming for me, I will say, but that has been helpful for sure. And the week 1 pickups of Dion Lewis and James Jones were really good. So, but with only $1 left in Fab, this is kind of what my team is at this point. So,
I don't believe in James Jones, and I've said that before. And I think that this is a good example of what you get with James Jones when he doesn't score a touchdown.
This is the first week he's had under 8 points, I think. So, yeah, it was a bad week.
No one on the Packers did good this week. This is not the week to say.
But for a third wide receiver, he's fine. I'm fine with him in my flex spot. And then, what do you guys think about David Cobb?
Well,
Flyer.
He hasn't played a game yet, so he
Flyer.
sucks.
He sucks because he hasn't played a game yet.
I mean, he's not getting any points.
Yeah, it's
That's correct.
It's quite speculative.
So other than the
Say
fact that he
that.
has not played a game, do you think he will contribute at all, or do you think it continues to be Antonio Andrews in Tennessee?
Well, it's not just Antonio Andrews. I mean, there's like 3 guys that they kind of haven't decided amongst there. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be impossible for him to distinguish himself, but he's going to have to be significantly better, and we just have no idea. So, quite speculative.
All right.
And they said David Cobb came in fat and out of shape, so that's not good.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with taking a chance on a guy like
Yeah.
that. Just
Well, if that pans out for me, I think I'll be in much better shape. But either way,
So,
anyway.
Mike, I think you're going to make the playoffs. This is my question to you. I think you're going to make the playoffs, going to 7-4. I think you'll at least make it in.
Okay.
How do you think you're going to do back? How do you think you're going to do with basically $0 left going into the playoffs? Because you're going to have to get a kicker, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I need to probably somehow swing a trade for a kicker of some kind.
ouch.
So I think you need a quarterback this week, and I think you need a kicker. So that's $2, and that's $1 too many for you.
So that's where trading comes in. But I mean, I've got 2 defenses, I've got 2 quarterbacks. I feel like I position myself at a spot where I don't have a lot of bye weeks left, and this team can kind of get me there. The kicker thing is an issue in week 11, but
Yeah, but I mean, you're also playing 2 teams we already labeled no schkapeel at least one more time each. You know what I mean? So you're also cruising a bit on the strength of your division there, whose points for is the most underwhelming of all the divisions.
yeah,
so.
it's not great. But yeah, I don't know. Did we think that Grimes was going to win it all at this point last year? Did we think that
No.
Dave was going to win it all the year before that?
Hey, you keep saying, Mike, just make it to the playoffs. And
Just
you
get there,
look
right?
You look like you're in good shape,
So, all right, let's move
regardless
on.
of the reasons.
So wait, real deal or no schkapeel on that?
So, a lukewarm real deal, because I think it's more about other people being bad than you being playoff worthy, but I still think you're going to make it, so real deal.
Mike, I'm going to say real deal.
I will also see real deal. Assassins are the last team here. They will look like they're going to be at 6-5, depending on how Andrew Luck plays tonight. It looks like he's probably going to lose this game to fall to 6-5 in second place in the division. His average points for is at 94.6, which is the highest in the division right now.
Yay for that.
Some of us like the Assassins coming out of the draft. Others did not. Anthony, what do you think of Brad's team? What has gone wrong or right for him? And do you think he can work his way into the playoffs?
Man, I had Brad's team at number, and there might be some historical, misrepresentation in the power rankings, but I had him at 12 last week, and he is much higher for me this week. I think his team came back to life with the birth of Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley, man.
Totally came back to life, which I didn't think he was going to be that impactful as a rookie running back. And now he's got Big Ben back, and I think DeAndre Hopkins continues to be freaking awesome. And there's still a couple holes, like maybe like his wide receiver,
Tight end.
maybe his flex and his tight ends are holes. But when you got guys like Gurley and Hopkins, and I think Big Ben will come back, putting up extra points like that. I think he can cover for it, and he's in that weak division. So
And Brandon Cooks even showed some life this week too. So yeah.
So, but
as did everyone on the Saints. Let's
True.
slow down on that one. I mean,
but as a team in a weak division with a very strong top to bottom lineup, or a strong top to bottom lineup,
It's solid, yeah.
it's solid. Yeah, he's looking good.
Hillers.
yeah,
Washington.
I would agree. I mean, a starting lineup looks fine. I think your concerns come after that. I mean,
So
I'm
does
fortunate
everybody's,
enough.
though, with all the
I'm
injuries this year.
Right. I'm fortunate enough to play him in Week 9 when he won't have DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm thinking I can probably take that game. Because
Still got Todd Gurley.
yeah, Todd Gurley's still in there, Doug Martin's still in there, and that's dangerous. But the quarterback is fine, but not overwhelmingly strong. There's a couple of places where you're looking like, are you really starting the Lions defense? That's not a good thing to do. I mean, the tight end position is weak.
He picked them up this week. He had to pick up a defense this week.
Yeah. Well, boy, did he make a shitty pick on that one.
I talked to him Saturday night, and he said he lost out on, I don't know, at least one other bid. So.
No, if there was any other team.
Still got $70 left. I don't know how he's losing bids on defense.
Right, how is he losing bids? Quit being such a cheap ass and get a good defense. But, and that's the other thing, is with all that free agent money left and with so many people hurt, he has a real opportunity this week and in weeks going forward to pick up people that other people just won't be able to afford.
He's going to get D'Angelo Williams or Jeremy Langford probably, right?
And so, his pick. I wouldn't recommend Jeremy Langford. I'm seeing 2 weeks on Forte, but that's just me.
Sure,
But,
of course you wouldn't.
But anyway, lots of opportunity for him and a weak division going forward. And if he doesn't win the division, I could still see him sneaking into the wild card with something at or above a 9-7 record.
Yeah.
Given who he has to play.
So Big Ben got hurt for him, and he picked up Fitzpatrick, who was a really solid pickup. Who went, 17, 13, 14, 26, 22. Pretty solid for a quarterback you're picking up off waivers. Trust me, they're hard to find. And so that helped him a lot. Now Fitzpatrick gets hurt right as Big Ben comes back, so now he's got himself that. And then he's got Mariota down there in his IR as well. Maybe even not just for this year, but for future years. Maybe he's a guy that he keeps around. You're right on his flex. I mean, his flex is kind of weak, but you figure he can plug in Blunt or David Johnson's okay, or
$70 of fab. I mean, that's what Hiller said. I think is right on. You go and you get that. You get two.
Go get D'Angelo Williams.
Go get D'Angelo Williams. Yes.
Go get the two best guys. You can spend $30 each and still have plenty of money to go. To make a. To save it for the run into the playoffs. I mean,
and that blocks Hillers from picking up a guy to replace Forte, who you're competing with to get maybe that wild card spot, in the playoffs. So who knows? Real deal or no schkapeel, gentlemen?
Real deal.
Real deal.
Real deal. Just saying, I had him at the number 4 in the power rankings preseason. Just throwing that out there. New Hope. New Hope is our next division, and we will start with the last place team there, who happens to be Iron Pirates Miscreant Crew, who will fall to 5-6 this week. They have an average points for of 85.6.
Ick.
I feel like Nick's team started off really strong, Hillers, and I'm not real sure what happened. Because I look at the team now and I'm like, why did we think this team was strong?
In week 1, Carlos Hyde had 30 points. And we were all like, oh no!
Yeah.
But that never happened again, and that ended up being like half his points for the remainder of the season. Travis Kelce still looks good.
Does he?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure he does.
71 points on the season?
His last 5 weeks, he had 2.9, 3.5, 8.8, 7.3, 10.
Well, I mean, you're the guy that likes to look at targets.
3 weeks with double-digit points.
I mean, it's a solid guy. 71 points on the season is better than a lot of wide receivers are doing that people are starting. You know what I mean? It's not amazing, but it's a good tight end. He had Adrian Peterson. That's always scary. Carson Palmer is looking like borderline, MVP. I don't think he'll get it, but I mean, it's like I've heard his name mentioned in 5 players that might. And he had guys coming up like Travis Benjamin that he got off the waivers really early, who had early games that were like huge. So early season, it was looking quite terrifying. Since then, a lot of cool off. And
Greg Olsen just dropped like a 20-yard pass right through.
And not as much left that's scary on this team. Not a lot of like, oh, that guy's really gonna ruin my game. And so, the results speak for themselves. And with Carlos Hyde hurt, that's certainly not helping.
Okay,
Mike, I have so many problems with hitting on Nick's team. So Kelce, I mean, Kelsey's been completely solid, and
He has been.
Kelce is the 4th best tight end in the league right now, and you rattled off 5 numbers. 2 of them were bad, but the other 3 are just fine for tight end production.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So that
I will concede that point. I spoke too soon on that one.
Carson Palmer is the 2nd best quarterback in the league. Now, granted, he hasn't had his bye yet, but still the 2nd best quarterback in the league right now. Adrian Peterson has been money. AJ Green has been money. I think one of the issues has been Randall Cobb, who gets all of his touchdowns vultured by James Jones. So even though he's a big name and he gets a lot of targets, he's not getting that double-digit points to help him win games, because teams without touchdowns don't win games.
Cobb he's had a down year, I feel like. Yeah.
And then my other.
It's been easy to key in on Cobb for opposing defenses with so many injuries on the Packers. With Ants much offered, Devontae Adams being hurt for so long, it's like they were throwing at guys that you'd never heard of before. And so why not load up on Randall Cobb? Maybe with Adams back, that opens up a little bit and he has a little more hope.
So Nick's problem is that he has like a really strong core. I mean, it's not even just a skeleton core. I mean, he's got strong number ones and twos, but he's missing a consistent flex, and I don't think he's active enough on the waiver market to bolster his crew. So, I was really wrong on Carlos Hyde a couple of weeks ago, where I was saying, hey, 6-point floor is just fine. He's going to be all right. That was only after 3 games, and he's been a real disappointment since.
Yeah, it's fine as long as you don't hit it, 6 out of 7 weeks, right?
But I don't know why he hangs on to guys like Owen Daniels and I guess Robert Woods. I know he was a recent pickup, but he's just, I don't think he's making enough moves, or at least the moves he's making are not the right ones. He went and spent a lot of money on Tom Rawls, who, I mean, I guess you could see why he might be the next Marshawn Lynch or whatever, but he has not been getting the number of carries. It was a 1-week fill-in,
But at the time you picked him up, it was a good pickup, right? I mean,
as a 1-week fill-in.
Yeah. Sure.
If he viewed it that same way, I think $16 might be a little much for a 1-week fill-in.
Well, but
you're not desperate at that point in the season.
I disagree, because it was a week when maybe, I don't know if he was playing Anthony or not, but like it's a week when you knew Marshawn Lynch was going to be out, and they announced he was going to be the guy, and it's the Seahawks who run the ball a lot.
It's borderline. I'm not saying it's the worst thing I've ever seen. Lord knows I've paid more than that for 1 week guys before, but just because I've done that enough, I usually end up thinking I paid too much for that guy later in the season when I need those.
You got him in week 4.
But why hang on to him? Like you're wasting you're wasting these roster spots. At least 3 roster spots that I can look at that are just not worth the value. When you could be going out and getting guys that are scoring points now, and he needs those guys to fill in.
And he's got $28 left in fab money. I'm not sure why you hold on to him. I know why you pick him up, but yeah, at this point, Lynch looks like he's back and he's good. So I don't know. Carson Palmer though. I mean, I will say that was a great pickup by him in the draft. Best QB value by far. Well, maybe Brady. Him and Brady were the top. He really doesn't have an RB2 right now at all. I don't know who the heck you start as your second running back. It's pretty brutal.
Rashad Jennings, I guess.
And basically his studs, who he was depending on, like Cobb and Hyde, haven't panned out, and that's really killed him. Even AJ Green, he's been good. I mean, he's been good. Don't get me wrong, but
but not like world-beating good.
Right. He hasn't been terrifying. I mean, 8, 7, and 3 the previous 3 weeks before this week.
His season profile looks suspiciously like Travis Benjamin's, and that's not what you want.
Yeah. So, real deal or no schkapeel? Or is there anything Nick can do at this point? Should he start? Should he deal somebody for next year, or what do we do here?
If he's going to deal somebody, he's giving up. And I think he just needs to make that decision and see what he can get for. I don't know. If you're dealing with another team that's given up, maybe you feel like you want to get rid of Hyde. If not, guys like Kelsey or Green or maybe
trade
Adrian Peterson.
Does he trade AJ Green?
Well, so does he trade both? I mean, because $30 a piece for those guys is a little undervalued for the draft, but not outrageous.
It depends on what he can get. I mean, and honestly, if he was offered someone really good for AJ Green, I would probably trade him. But if he's just like, I'll give you a number 2 running back that is in a committee or something, then no, hang on to him.
But he should be shopping him, I think, right? I mean,
yeah, make some offers for sure. You never know what you'll get if you make some offers.
Yeah. Okay.
Nick loves Cincinnati wide receivers, though. He loves them.
He does. It's true.
Who was that one guy that he loved with the hair?
Hosh Mazode.
Championship.
Hosh Mazode. All right. Real deal or no schkapeel on Nick's team?
No schkapeel.
No schkapeel.
No schkapeel. Ween Ye, our consensus champion preseason. We all picked him to win it all. Put the jinx on him for sure. He will be.
He said it too. He was so mad.
I think he will be at 5-6 after this week. Because I think I pulled ahead of him, and I'm not sure based on how Carolina's doing if I'm still ahead or not. Looking. I'm not looking. All right. Anyway, looks to be he's probably going to be a 5-6. He has averaged 98.3 points.
That's pretty good, actually.
It's pretty good. He's had some bad luck schedule-wise. Anthony, what has gone wrong for the Masters of Elegance?
I think it can only be bad luck schedule-wise because I look at his team, and it's so good. I mean,
it really is good.
He just lost Steve Smith, and it doesn't even freaking matter to him. You know what I mean? Like, Steve Smith was maybe a bye-week fill-in for him.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be bad luck. I'll say three things. Number one, bad schedule luck. Number two, it's a little tough when you're starting two of the same, or you got to choose between running backs like Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard. I think that hurts them because sometimes you want to start both, and it gets a little weird. And then three,
he's got McCoy too.
I know, but then you got to choose. And is it going to be the Jeremy Hill day, or is it going to be Giovanni Bernard day? And you never really know. And
That's
then the last thing is, he's just got a mediocre QB. Russell Wilson is not performing yet to at least where I thought he was going to be this year. And now he's going to be playing matchups, I think, with Bortles and Russell Wilson for the rest of the year, unless one of them just goes nuts.
Yeah, and I don't really see a problem with playing matchups with those two guys. They're both doing fine, and against a weak opponent, could have a really good game. They're both talented young guys that have shown that they can put touchdowns up in games, especially against mediocre-ish opponents. So if you're going to have a twosome to choose between from week to week, that's a perfectly good one. I think the reason it hasn't panned out to where we expected was preseason, everybody had much higher expectations for guys like Jeremy Hill and Mike Evans, and just maybe mid-season he had higher expectations for a guy like Devontae Parker. It's just like they've done fine. Just we thought they were going to be like the best players in the league. Like I kept hearing Jeremy Hill top 5 running back this year, and that's obviously just not going to happen. And having to choose between it is a major liability. LaShawn McCoy is maybe never going to be the LaShawn McCoy that we expected. Although now that he's healthy and playing, he at least has an opportunity to be a good 1 or 2 guy. And so I think he can still put a good solid lineup together. It's just not quite as terrifying as we thought it was going to be, but he's definitely going to spoil somebody's season with this lineup.
I know he's had some issues figuring out, and one of the problems you have when you have a deep team like this is figuring out who you need to play, like who's your starters, right? And I know there's at least 1 or 2 weeks where he started the wrong guys at wide receiver, because when you're sitting on Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Steve Smith, and add Demaryius Thomas to the mix now, you've got 4 receivers who you can plug in. Of course, Steve Smith, not anymore. But like this week, he had 4 receivers who he could plug in. And I know there's at least 1 or 2 weeks where he sat the wrong guy, and the guy who scored like 30 points and would have won in the game. So, you go to 7-5 or 7-3 or something, or whatever, 6-5 instead of 5-6. That's a big difference, So that definitely hurt him. The McCoy had a bad first half as well. He was hurt. He was, on the IR. Should he have dealt Steve Smith before he got hurt? Is that a guy?
Oh, well, that's so much hindsight. And
I'm not saying even not knowing what we know now. Should that have been something he looked at doing?
Well, who do you get? I mean, the number 2 wide receiver is the most shopped and least sought after position in terms of trade in this league. And that's kind of where he is.
I don't know that is he a number 2 though?
But he's not even a keeper though. I mean, so you're like basically getting a 1-year guy that.
Right. So you deal it to somebody who thinks they're in it for this year. I mean, so I guess my question is, should he have bailed? Like, I guess you don't give up when you're 5-5, right? Like, that's not something you should do.
No.
Probably not. And while Steve Smith had good points, it wasn't exactly Mr. Consistency down the line either. It's like if he'd offered me Steve Smith for somebody big, I would not have been thrilled about it. You know what I mean? Because he has games that are 15, 19, and 30, and he also has games that are 1, 2, and 7. So it wouldn't have been the guy that I would much have preferred. Keenan Allen, or the guy that I got, Larry Fitzgerald.
Well, of course, sure.
So.
Of course, you'd prefer Keenan Allen.
Well, and that's who we was shopping. So.
Okay. All right, so real deal or no schkapeel? This one's a tough one, guys, because he's still technically in it, and we like his team. So, do we think this is a real deal team?
How many of these can we have? 5?
I
You can
always
have as many as you want.
no.
Do you think this team?
Five. There's only some real deals. Merrill loves that.
Real deal or no schkapeel? I will tell you, there is no limit to how many you can have. It's a free country.
No.
All right, I'm going real deal.
I'm also going real deal. He's averaging 98 points a week. That's nothing to sneeze at. And this team could win out. I mean, they have the talent. They could win out and end up going 10-6 on the year.
You know what's interesting is that his team is this good, and then he also somehow acquired Jamal Charles, who is easily a keeper for next season.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not easily, but probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So who do you keep? I mean, so he'll be looking to deal a running back for sure in the offseason, right?
Yeah. I believe that Wilson will turn it on. Did I say that already? I think he's going to turn it on for the second half.
He might. All right, EBS is our next team.
Well, wait. I'm going to go ahead and say no schkapeel.
Okay.
Despite the fact that in the next weeks, get this schedule. Oh, I wish I had this schedule. He plays PBJ, Iron Pirates, Duplex of Mediocrity. Through week 11. But
he wins those 3. He's at 8-6.
Yeah, but he only needs 2 losses to not make it, and his last 2 are against divisional opponents that are EBS and the Choops. So.
Yeah, but he can beat those teams.
So borderline.
He could run it.
And since I bow to reality and recognize that only 5 people are making it, I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Has
deal.
nothing to do with real deal or no schkapeel. EBS is our next team. They are at 7-4 after this week. Average points for of 100.9. Our first team to average around the century mark, or at the century mark. Hillers, we'll start with you here. Looking at Anthony's team, we both had him rated very highly coming into the season, and I think he started a little slower than he thought he was going to, but now he looks to be kind of back in full stride here. Do you think this team continues that? I mean, what went wrong? What went right here for this team? How do you think their season's going?
Well, there were definitely things.
A lot of questions right there.
Yeah, well, there were definitely things that were not starting for this team. The only thing early season that looked like, wow, that's really good. I wish I had it, and I didn't. Is Chris Ivory? Maybe it's like Marshawn was having injury troubles, in as early as week 4, and you were looking at the things and saying, oh, other than Antonio Brown, who's on this wide receiver core? There's like no one here I like.
And there wasn't for a while.
But then, things started to change around. Waiver wire pickups had transformed the face of this team. Something called Gary Barnage is a must-start wide receiver. Forget tight end, wide receiver.
Yeah.
In this league right now, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then I would love to have guys on my team like Willie Snead or Stephon Diggs right now. And with
they're available.
And with Devontae Adams coming back, and you still got guy in between Ivory Lynch and even Yeldon to an extent, guys that you can put in a lineup. There's only a couple of things I would tell this team. One of which is probably get a backup quarterback just in case. But because we've seen bad things can happen in this league, and with Kyrie Robinson being hurt, obviously, you're hurting a little bit in depth, but I think the trend as the weeks go on is for this team to get more depth and more promise rather than less. And so I think that makes him much scarier than he looked 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right. I don't think you need to get a backup quarterback right now. I mean, if Brady gets hurt, then you go pick somebody up, but he doesn't have any bye week coming up, so keep the roster spots somewhere else if you need them. Yeah, he definitely started slow. The Big Ben injury hurt you with Antonio Brown. Whenever you got Michael Vick throwing to your receiver, it's never something that makes you happy.
Or Jarvis Landry.
And I think you did have the worst wide receiver 2 situation in the league for a couple of weeks there, which was a disaster, Anthony. But hey, Stephon Diggs, man, great pickup because now that plug him in, man, that's a great wide receiver 2 to have. And not only that,
maybe
but Kamar
one by the end of the season.
And with Steve Smith going down, Kamar Aiken is also, his stock just went way up too. So your receiving core just got way better. You have a very strong team. And although I would suggest maybe you can drop Jay Ajayi at this point, but he's not really taking up a roster spot anyway. So.
Well, I completely I completely disagree because he's coming off the pup this week, and I think
Yeah, he's
gonna
got
be
half
good.
a season to prove himself to see if he's worth keeping. And at $5,
You think
go
they're
ahead,
going to play him
absolutely.
over Lamar Miller?
I think
And-
they're going to work him in.
And
Okay.
it looks
All right.
looks like he can put him in where Kyrie Robinson left without hurting his team too much here. So go for it, keep him. Or if you're not going to, trade him to me.
Jay Ajayi?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'll pick him up off waivers in week 11.
All right, if you say so.
Have fun with that.
Yeah. Anthony, what about you, man? How do you think? Take us through your season a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit it early on. Early on, I had troubles with injuries. I mean, even Chris Ivory was injured there in the beginning. I mean, remember he had those couple games where he was actually playing but didn't get any snaps, and so it was real tough to start two playing running backs, and that hurt me. And especially hurt me, I think, in the week four doubleheader where I played two weak opponents at the time, who both put up, I think, something like 80s, and I couldn't beat either of them. So that was real tough. But I've turned it on since. I'm happy with my waiver wire pickups in Diggs, Snead, and maybe Aiken. But like I said, with Steve Smith, anything can happen. Now I forbid myself to make any more waiver claims last week because I just wanted to roll and see, and it did reward me. So
Let it marinate a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember like 3 weeks ago you were thinking about trading for Jamal Charles and possibly somewhat bailing on this season. I mean, I don't know how serious you were about that, but I remember it was discussed briefly.
I probably am not going to give up Brady.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't just Jamal Charles for Brady at that point either, but yeah. Okay. Let's go to the first place team in this division. Well, no, I'm sorry. They're not the first place team after this week, but they were. Freeman and the Choops. New team name. Thanks to you, JD and Hillers, for that. They find themselves at 6-5 after this week. Their average points for is at 101.9. I don't know that we need to discuss what went right for this team too much, Anthony. But, let's look at the Choops team and see. Looks like they finally got themselves a little run at the playoffs here, right?
I don't know yet. If you look at his bye weeks, it's very 9 and 10 heavy.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't know. I'll have to pop the schedule maybe when you guys can look, but
Yeah,
I don't see him.
the doubleheader week and Devonta Freeman off is not what he wants to see. And Phillip Rivers off that same week, which is most of his team, including his only tight end and only kicker right now. So
Yeah.
bad news.
But I mean, Anthony, do you think I don't know. I mean, he's sitting there at 6-5. I mean, he's got a shot at it. Do you think this is a team? I mean, is there anything he can do? Is there anything that, I don't know. Looking at this team, what do you think?
I think it's a great team. I think it's more than just Freeman and the Choops. I mean, Freeman's been a huge part of it, but a lot of other things are going right for him. Allen Robinson looks freaking sick when he plays. I mean, he's Bortles' favorite target by far, and he's just on fire. Landry is completely solid.
Sanders.
And Sanders is down there. And Ladarius Green. Oh no, Green's out now, right? Didn't he just get hurt?
Well, Gates is playing too.
Most people got hurt this week.
I think it's a solid team. I think he's got enough money to still be a little bit active on the waiver because he's got to fill the hole that Joe Randall. I don't think Joe Randall's even going to come back to the NFL this year, so he's got to go. So maybe just tighten up the flex spot a little bit.
You call him Joe? You guys on a nickname basis there, or?
Actually, I take it back.
JoJo.
I think you gotta shore up the running back 2 spot here because you got plenty of wide receivers. It's the running back 2. Who is it?
Yeah, who is it? Good question.
It's really surprising. Remember how good Amir Abdullah looked in Week 1? He was running fast.
On the preseason, really.
No, Week 1 he had a great week, and I remember I forget who they
do.
I mean, he was exploding through holes and stuff like that.
It's a family show.
Stuff
Yeah.
like that.
And I don't know what's going on with Detroit. So solid team, but really tough on the schedule. I think it's going to come down to the matchups in Week 9 and Week 10.
All right, Hillers. Have
Yeah,
you talked to JD about his team at all? You were up
I
there last
did,
week.
and I received a large number of trade offers for Jacandrick West,
Yeah.
which I don't think I was willing to accept.
Good thing
Because,
you
because the team is, despite its relatively solid wide receiver position, a little brittle. You know what I mean? And to have your two best players in Phillip Rivers
but I
and
mean-
Devonta Freeman out during a doubleheader week, when a doubleheader week puts you with the dreaded 7 loss, means that he has to lose just one more. And I do like his wide receivers, but I don't know if those alone will be enough to ensure that he wins out enough to hold on here. I think whether or not he makes the playoffs is going to be dependent not on what happens in this division at all, but what happens in my division. You know, and how many.
he has. It is a problem. He has 0 running backs he can start in Week 10. I mean, he has Theo Riddick and Amir Abdullah, who, I mean, if you're starting both Detroit running backs, things you got.
Right,
But,
and his points for is ridiculous, but a lot of that is Devonta Freeman and is scoring as much as more than most quarterbacks in the league,
Yeah.
which is you also got to consider whether that pace is sustainable.
Sure.
And it's hard to argue that, you'll keep doing that through the end of the season. It's just, if it would happen, it would be amazing, but I think football's just a really hard game, and it doesn't get any easier as the season goes on, and I am a little bit skeptical that he can maintain that kind of pace.
So
Sure.
his week 9 is against Black Widows, and his week 10 is against EBS and Dad Dicks.
right.
It's kind of a tough-ish. It's not a cake schedule. Some people have sort of a cake schedule going forward, and he doesn't. So
Week
whether or not he
9,
makes the
he's-
payoffs depends on whether somebody in Empire Strikes Back has enough wins or not.
Right. Okay. So real deal or no schkapeel here? Also, get yourself a tight end, JD. Come on, you're better than that.
I also have a tight end. If you are
I'm gonna say no schkapeel on this team because suck it, JD.
no schkapeel for me as well. 5-team rule. I'm saving my second wildcard spot.
I'm going to say real deal. Screw it.
All right. Empire Strikes Back division. We will start at the bottom of the division. Who the champion from 2 years ago looks to not be making the playoffs this year. The duplex of mediocrity find themselves at 4-7 with an average points for of 88.3. Having a rough year here. Dave, again, I've said this I think on the podcast before, but wasn't a huge fan of his team coming out of the draft, and hasn't really panned out for him either. Hillers, looking at Dave's team here, what went wrong for Dave?
I think he was relying on the Eddie Lacy and Alfred Morris of 2 years ago, and both those situations have somewhat collapsed this season. I think he was thinking that if he had an entire complement of, could pan out wide receivers, that he'd have one or two that became superstars. He has one or two that are good, but not really enough to sort of propel him into victories. And the fact that Andrew
I'm going to disagree
Luck,
with you on those wide receivers, by the way. I think his wide receivers are great.
well,
But,
Edelman is great, and Amari Cooper is looking like he's knocking on greatness, and the rest of these are maybe they work out, maybe they don't sort of guys.
Macklin's been pretty great, too. He just was hurt. He got hurt for a game, but
Well, but
not great.
I
He's been good.
didn't get to the biggest problem, which was early on he needed to react to the fact that Andrew Luck was not Andrew Luck anymore. And he did a great job at that in getting and starting Derek Carr, who looks really good. But the running back core, as it is now, is probably the worst in the league. And
Yeah.
the receivers are good, but not good enough to overcome that kind of thing.
Right. Anthony, I mean, should he have tried to deal like Edelman or a Cooper for a running back, or?
I think Edelman is a guy that should deal, not Cooper. I think you might want to keep Cooper even at $20 next year.
Yeah.
But you got to. I think I would have dealt Lace. I don't think you can get anything for Morris. I mean, I would deal him for sure, but I don't think you're going to get anything for him.
No, you're not.
But I think it's time to deal Lacy, and I think it's probably you could get something pretty damn good for Julian Edelman.
Yeah. I mean, what are you looking for? You're looking for keepers at this point, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely keepers.
But are you
Yes.
trading? So
Somebody
Lacy,
cheaper.
you don't plan on keeping Lacy at $38 next year?
I don't think so.
No, I mean it's hard to say what's going on with the Green Bay running game this season. It
Dave
definitely
loves his guys, man. He loves staying loyal to his guys.
I mean, and Lacey had a lot of reason to stay loyal to him. He's done incredibly well there the last 2 years. It's just and even being a Packers fan, maybe it's just they thought they'd have more success in the run game. Maybe it's that they wanted to make it more of a committee with Starks. Maybe it's injuries. I have heard that he's been playing a little bit hurt. If in the second half of the season he really comes on, maybe still a guy worth keeping. But this season, it's too late.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think you try to trade Lacey. I mean, I hope it's not too late, but
or maybe
his,
Duke Johnson if somebody wants him. I mean, that Cleveland situation.
See, but the problem with that is he's might be a keeper for next year.
Yeah, well, it depends on if you think any one person is going to get the job in Cleveland or not. If you think any one person is, then he's probably the guy to get.
Right. Okay. Yeah, just a tough year for Dave. I think the running back core in general just killed him. Hard to come back from that.
And they're not easy to get either.
No, they're not.
It's not like you can fetch one on the waivers.
Touchdown Jesus, or the carcass that used to be Touchdown Jesus, is our next team here.
Oh wait, no schkapeel on the.
No schkapeel.
No schkapeel.
They find themselves at 5-6 with a 95.8 average points for. For some reason, last week they decided to, at 5-5, totally bail on their season and make a trade with Hillers that nobody really understood except for you, Pritchard. So
thank you, Pritchard.
He traded away Matt Forte for Darren McFadden and T.Y. Hilton for Martavis Bryant, both losing on both ends of that deal.
And Kelvin Benjamin.
And also Kelvin Benjamin, I guess. Yeah, so there's that. Anyway, Anthony Pritchard looks to have bailed on his season. I'm sure you have a few things you'd like to say about this team.
I'll agree. I'll start with the trade, and it's the most puzzling because you can't keep 3 wide receivers. So by getting both Bryant and Kelvin Benjamin and having Dante Moncrief there, I mean.
And Des Bryant.
I just don't.
And Martavis Bryant.
Yeah, so I just don't get it. And then you kind of knew Darren McFadden would probably be in something of a timeshare with Christine Michael. So I just don't. And he's also Darren McFadden, who's injured all the time. And
well, it's not. And he's old. Who knows what he's going to be doing next year?
I just don't get it. I think that you could have got a lot better things for Matt Forte and T.Y. Hilton. I mean, what's wrong with T.Y. Hilton? Wasn't that old. I think you could have got a lot better for it, and it seemed very one-sided. It's just it just seemed odd.
Yeah, and then he dropped Crabtree. Just bailed on him while he had 2 kickers on his team. He dropped Crabtree,
and 2 tight ends.
So there was a stat yesterday.
And 2 defenses.
There was a stat yesterday during the evening game that said, it was during the Raiders game, and it was before that Raiders game. Crabtree was on pace for 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns for that season, which is a great. I mean, I think
wants that? That sounds like waiver wire fodder to me.
Throw it on the pile.
And then after that game, now it's higher, of course. It's probably 1,100 yards or something like that. So, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. And then, of course, who ends up with Crabtree? It's Evan.
So let's look at what happened early season to him and why he found himself in this position, I guess. I mean, he kind of went in with the stars and scrubs strategy, right? That's what Pritchard does. He kept a lot of his big money guys and had about $13 that he could use in the draft. C.J. Anderson was the guy he kept. He kind of stunk. Dez got hurt, hadn't been able to use him. And when you lose those 2 top guys and you had no money at all in the draft to get any depth, this is what kind of happens, right, Hillers?
Apparently. I can't help but wonder if things would have been different if he just scored 0.3 more points in the game against me and gone 2-0 in that doubleheader week. You know, I mean, especially considering that he managed to pick up Alfred Blue and that Darren McFadden is looking like he has at least a semi-starting position here. His team isn't nearly as damaged as one might expect from giving away 2 huge guys like that. Not that I mind, great trade, love it, but it's still a strong roster. If you think you can rely on guys like Alfred Blue or Darren McFadden, then sure, you're looking fine. I mean, and there's more reason than there was to believe in Ronnie Hillman. I think after his last, 4 games, he had 1 bad one and 3 good ones. And so while I would have more wide receivers on this team, especially after last week, having any 3 people would just freak me out at all times. He does have a good team, and I think he did sort of say, there's no way. There's just too much competition with the parity that's in the league, and maybe a little bit soon gave up on it. But I certainly am in no position to complain.
Yeah, I mean, you sit there and say, well, he might have found something, Darren McFadden, and Ronnie Hillman's okay. It's like, who's better than Darren McFadden and Ronnie Hillman? Matt Forte.
Well, when he plays.
Who he had on his team at the time. So that's the thing, right? And so he basically, that's a trade. The only thing you can look at and say is he's thinking about next year.
Next year, obviously he was thinking about it.
And it's the Kelvin Benjamin throw-in, I think, that makes that, I guess, somewhat palatable. But real deal or no schkapeel here, boys?
I mean, no schkapeel. It's
no schkapeel.
Yeah.
All right, next team, Hiller's Hot Carl, find themselves at 6-5 with an average points for of 95.6. Really thought he was going to win this past week. And,
I really did.
Was texting around, everything's coming up Hillers, and was very excited. And doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
That was before the Saints game.
Anthony, looking at Hiller's team here. It seems like it's been a roller coaster for him, up and down. And so, some weeks we love his team, other weeks we hate his team here. What do we think about his team right now?
It's funny because when I was doing the power rankings, I was like, man, Hiller's team is so much worse because he lost Forte and this, that, and the other thing. But I think he's still got Ingram and West. He's still got a solid lineup.
Yeah,
it's good. He's got.
They
a
have
good
bye
team.
weeks coming up though.
He's still got it. He's still got Aaron Rodgers there. Everyone was hemming and hawing about how Aaron Rodgers got embarrassed and he's not the guy that he was. Okay, you're allowed to have a bad team, a bad game against
Denver. Yeah.
Against the number 1 passing team.
Yeah, that's allowed. It's allowed once in a while.
Yeah,
it'll be okay. It does suck to lose
obviously should
Forte.
have started Alex Smith.
It does suck to lose Forte, but the thing is, all it does is kind of negate the gains that he got unnaturally in that trade.
Unnaturally.
I summoned dark forces.
A shady deal with the devil that he made.
So at the end of it, he's still got. I think he's still got maybe the team that he had before the trade, which was good. Which is probably a wild card team.
Probably a slight upgrade at receiver too.
And I'll say that he also has a good pick on that tight end Ben Watson, because if he continues the streak of replacing Jimmy Graham, then that's going to be a lot of extra points at that slot.
Sure. Yeah, and with Jordan Reed kind of in and out of the lineup constantly, Craig Olsen with another drop. Awesome. That Ben Watson's nice to plug in, or just start him and not have to depend on Jordan Reed, I guess. Hiller's
Ben Watson's had a hell of he's had a hell of a season, and his last 4 games have been pretty monster for a tight end. I mean, that's something you got to be really happy about. And Jordan Reed, this is what he does every year. Don't be surprised that Jordan Reed is in and out of the lineup. I think you should know that when you're drafting him.
Right. Hillers, take us through your season, man.
Yeah, totally roller coaster. I did not like my season coming out of the draft, and I had very little faith in it, especially going into a Week 7 doubleheader where I was playing Evan and Pritchard, and Rodgers was on a bye. I was like, well, this is lost. But since it's not lost, things have started to look up quite a bit. I think even if I knew then what I knew today, that Forte was going to get hurt and be out for maybe, I don't know, it's looking like somewhere in the 3-4 week time frame, I still would have done it. I've got enough depth. I really like my waiver wire pickups, guys like Alan Hearns, Ginn, Tavon Austin. I think they just add the sort of depth that I need to be able to be flexible with those guys, or to offer guys like that up, since they're all relatively cheap. All those guys I said, hey, your running backs aren't that good, but maybe you can get something for them. Maybe you want some keepers. I'll announce it right now. I'm in the trade market. Come get some of these guys. I could use a running back for the next couple of weeks, even if they're not amazing. And that's what I'm going to try to do. And I think being active and sort of looking not just at who I got, but bye weeks and people's situations have been advantageous in getting a little bit more depth and a little bit more star power on the team here. So
Guys,
I'm pleased with it.
Please be orderly when you're lining up your trade offers for Ted Ginn Jr. Just no fighting or pushing.
Everybody, take it easy, all right?
Hey, Davon Austin for $2. I could see as you might think that's good for you next season.
So for all of those of you who didn't want Tavon Austin 2 weeks ago when Hillers picked him up off waivers, now he is available for trade.
Hey man, shit changes. People didn't want Alan Hearns at some point either, and now people say, hey, Alan Hearns looks good, and I agree with them. You know, people didn't want Ben Watson. I got him off the waivers, but they want him now. So
good.
Don't crash the internet with all the bandwidth and trade offers.
I'm just saying, I've got a survivable next couple of weeks, and if I can make it through that, and Forte's back for my last couple of games, I still think I got a good shot at it. And despite Rodgers' one bad game, he still has a very solid number of points for a quarterback. And if he does happen to line, I mean, he's playing the Panthers next week, I maybe might consider starting Alex Smith. But after that, it's Lions, Vikings, and Lions again in Week 13. I mean, that all looks awesome. So.
Yep. Okay.
So Hillers has to worry about weeks 9 and 11, and in those weeks he plays Assassins, which could be a loss, and 11 looks like it is Sex Cannons, which also could be a loss. So maybe it will come down to the doubleheader week for you, Hillers.
Yeah.
Real deal or no
doesn't have
schkapeel?
DeAndre Hopkins his week, so I'm not the only one with the problem that week.
Real deal or no schkapeel?
Real deal.
I will say no schkapeel.
Real deal for me. I think I can snag that second wild card spot,
All right.
especially if Forte comes right back.
Sex Cannons find themselves at 8-3, first place in the division, 103.1 point average on the year. Real deal or no schkapeel?
Yeah,
Real deal.
Real deal. All right, let's get into the power rankings.
Whoa! I just want to say one thing about Evan's team. You know,
we have to?
Yeah, I mean, hey,
Really was hoping that would be a good bit we did right there.
Got to spread it out a little bit. I said
he's unstoppable now with Orleans Darkwa.
His guys are coming around a little bit. You know, I think we said in the beginning in week 4 that it was just Julio carrying his team, and some of the guys are turning it on that I didn't expect, like Lamar Miller,
Eli.
like Calvin Johnson.
Like
I don't know, I'm not sold on Eli.
Defense.
I mean,
that goddamn defense has won him as many games as anyone on this team.
Yeah.
And
they're killing it, dude.
His running back
Murray.
situation sucks, though. I hope it kills him.
I don't
It's
know.
not great.
DeMarco
terrible.
Lamar, I think he'll be okay.
Lamar Miller's had 2 good weeks, basically. So.
Well,
yeah.
I'd say he's had 3 good weeks, the last 3. You know, when you're playing the Patriots and you still manage 9.4 points, that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. All right. Real deal?
Yeah.
Congrats, Evan. Yay. You're good again.
Oh, everyone's so excited.
All right. Power rankings. Let's crank through these here. We'll go 12 to 7. Anthony, why don't you start us off there, buddy?
Sure. 12, got the Dad Dicks. 11 is PBJ time. 10 is Touchdown Jesus. 9er is Iron Pirate. The Ocho is the Duplex. And Black Widows is 7.
Hillers.
At 12, I have the Duplex. At 11, I have PBJ time. Dad Dicks at 10. Iron Pirates at 9. Weenye at 8. And the Choops at 7.
Who do you have at 12? TDJ?
At 12, I have Duplex.
Where do you have TDJ?
Not in 12 through 7.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
It's a good team. It's still a good team.
Okay. At 12, I've got PBJ. At 11, I've got TDJ. At 10, I've got Iron Pirate. 9, I have the Dad Dicks. 8, I have the Duplex. And at 7, I have Hiller's Trickery, mainly due to the Forte injury. I've dropped you a few spots there.
I can still start a flex.
Congrats. Anthony.
So our top 6, we're looking at Weenye for number 6, Hillers at number 5, the Choops at 4, EBS at 3, Assassins at 2, and number 1 is the Sex Cannons.
All right. Hillers.
I have TDJ at 6, Black Widows at 5, Assassins at 4. I've got myself at 3. I've got EBS at 2, and Sex Cannons at 1.
I have the Widows at 6, the Wingye at 5, Freeman and the Choops at 4, even though I said no schkapeel on their team.
Yeah, it makes no sense, Merrill.
I think I gave 8 teams real deal this year.
Whatever. It's a scientific method. 3, I've got the Assassins. At 2, I got EBS, and at 1, I've got the Sex Cannons. So let's get to. I did a little something here, gentlemen. I went back to our Week 1 podcast and just fast forwarded to the end where we did our preseason predictions, and we'll go through. Anthony, we'll do yours first here. Your division winners. You had the Black Widows. You had the Sex Cannons.
That's looking good.
And you had the Wingye as your third one.
Still could happen.
Could happen. And at wild card, you had EBS and Duplex.
Ooh.
So, could be 4 out of 5 though on your playoff teams. Could be.
Yeah,
It's possible.
I had division winners. I had the Widows. I had EBS, and I had the Sex Cannons. And then at wild card, I had Wingye and the Dad Dicks. So could be 4 out of 5 there as well. Hellers, you had division winners: Sex Cannons, Wingye, and PBJ.
Ooh.
That's
Yes.
And then as your wild card,
that'll teach me.
as your wild card, you had EBS and Iron Pirate. That's the wild card.
Ouch.
Championships.
Worse than usual this year.
Yeah, it was. You went out on a limb with the PBJ there.
I did.
That limb
Never
snapped.
again.
Anthony, as your champion, we all had Wingye as our champion. And Anthony, you had them over Black Widows. Hillers, you had them over the Sex Cannons, and I had them over EBS. So all of our championship games are technically still possible. So not too bad there, guys.
So I can go over the money, the winnings from the last, I guess it'd be 5 weeks.
I
No, I'm
believe
sorry.
the term is monies. I think
The
it's
monies, the cash. Yeah. So we had not finished Week 4 at the last podcast. Week 4 minigame was the lowest scoring team. That goes to Nick at 50.1 points. That is pathetic.
Way to go, buddy.
Week 5 went to the biggest loser of the week. So basically, whoever got crushed, the loser gets the $10. That week it was Danny Grimes. He was down negative 30.7 points.
I'm noticing a trend on our mini games here. We should really reward success more than failure, I feel like.
Yeah.
There's only a couple. It's those two, actually.
So 6 is highest scoring QB. That goes to Andrew Luck and Dave at 30.9 points.
Wow.
Week
Especially
7,
improbable this year.
It was against me.
Yeah, Week 7 was highest scoring running back. That goes to Lamar Miller and Evan, 35.6.
Boo.
And this week is not over, but I'm already going to reward it to Odell Beckham, 30.1 points to Mike Merrill. So the money's been fairly evenly distributed. Evan's leading with $20, 2 minigame wins, and everyone else has 10, exceptions to Hillers, JD, myself, Brett, and Pritchard. We're all at a big fat donut.
Oh. Well, there's a lot of season left. So, well, not a lot, but some.
There's some season.
Yeah.
Some season left. All right. Well, let's wrap it up then, gentlemen. We've gone pretty long here. So, any final thoughts? Things you want to get off your chest? No? Okay.
No.
All right. Let's wrap it up then. We'll go visit Venice. For Anthony, for Hillers, this is Merrill saying we will talk to you guys later.